Welcome to Women Winning Divorce with your host, Heather Quick. Heather brings over 20 years of law experience that advocates and empowers women to achieve happier and healthier lives. Each week, we provide knowledge and guidance on different aspects of family law to help lead women through the difficult and emotional legal challenges that they are facing. Listen in as she discusses issues including divorce, custody, alimony, paternity, narcissism, mediation, and other family law issues to provide insight on the journey of women winning divorce. Welcome to the show. I'm Julie Morgan, and I'm joined by your host, Heather Quick. Hi, Heather.
Good morning, Julie. How are you today?
I am doing quite well because you know what? This is going to be a fun topic.
Oh, indeed. Indeed it is.
Alimony. Let's talk about it. Let's get into it. What is alimony?
Alimony is, created in the law to provide for the spouse who has higher needs without the ability to financially support themselves after a divorce. So there's a certain amount of money in the household when they're married, and then when they separate, and traditionally and historically, it's been men paying alimony to women because they didn't work or can't make as much, don't make as much, to everybody here to maintain their standard of living after divorce.
Is alimony required in a divorce in Florida?
No, it's not required. There are many factors, and it's something that, scares the heck out of anybody who thinks they might have to pay alimony, and the idea of permanent alimony. But you meet several pretty much, benchmarks. And the first one is how long the parties have been married. And typically, we'll talk about the long-term marriage, anything over 17 years. Then it's presumed there's going to be permanent alimony. However, if both people are professionals making the same salary, no, it's not going to be. But, there are many cases where that's not the case. Sometimes it can be a shorter term marriage, but there are reasons and factors that, support a long order, an order of permanent alimony.
Okay. So let me ask you this. So we defined alimony. Do you believe it's especially important for the stay-at-home mom?
When you have not worked and supported your husband through maybe not financially, they're the financial breadwinner, you're at home, maintaining the home, having children. And you know what? You don't even have to have children. Not everybody does, and they stay at home, but they maintain the home. They provide, support for that husband, allowing him to not worry about those details and go be successful. And that is the theory behind it. Hey, I'm here taking care of all this other stuff so that you can go earn the money. How do I get compensated for that? In a divorce, you want to trade me in, you turn 50 and you're thinking, hey, now I want a 25-year-old wife. Here I've given half my life towards this marriage and to your career, because it's all financial at the end of the day. So therefore, how can we compensate that? Is that fair? Well, of course, a lot of people don't think so, but we've talked about that. We're talking about the law, not what's fair. It is just how it's equitable, ideally. And it is, this person, how do we compensate them? And really in the law, it's usually financially. You think about personal injury, medical malpractice, civil lawsuits, it's through money. You can't, change the divorce, the fact that she's given all this time and energy to this relationship. And now she's supposed to go out and get a minimum wage job, but here they had a great life. She's raised the kids in a house, car, country club, all of these things. And you're just going to say, no, I'm not going to, there's going to be no support for you. So that's a lot of the theory behind it.
I am trying not to get ahead of myself with asking you the questions. And so I'm trying to go step by step, but I have so many other things I want to ask you. Okay, so let's talk about the formula. Is there a formula that the court has or that's in the law that says, okay, you're going to get X amount of dollars?
No. And that has been a topic of much proposed legislation for many, many years. It is a extremely volatile topic. I will tell you, I took a stand on that, just so you know, got completely harassed. And it's unbelievable how aggressive and awful the situation became. We were in Tallahassee at the Capitol. So that it gets people very fired up, and they want a formula. They want more predictability. The way the formula was orchestrated just didn't take into account the need. And, and it's the ability to pay and the need. That's where we start. And that means, what the husband makes. And so many times one spouse may have the ability to pay, but the other one doesn't have the need. Like I said, say they're both practicing doctors, making this, making, maybe even he makes a little more, but she makes so much too that the needs are covered. So it really is a good system, but it really requires a good lawyer to help you understand, especially if you're entitled to alimony. How does this work? What do you have to prove to the courts in order to prove that? So it's important, because it is a financial analysis. And sometimes we even have experts in there to help us with proving up the alimony, the need, and or where all the money is when he's saying, oh, I don't have all that much money, but it's there. And that happens more with a business owner, just because there's a lot of ways that you can legally not have as high of an income. But usually with your W-2 employee, no matter what they're earning, you're tracking it. You know how much is coming in.
Okay, yeah. You can hide it, basically. That's me saying that, not Heather. All righty. So,
but I don't disagree.
So you really have to think about, you said that you can bring in experts and, to think about this, and it's about the person's earning ability as well, and also their employability. Because if they have not worked the entire marriage, let's say they don't have an education, they have no experience, then what else are you supposed to do?
Exactly. And I mean, that's the reality, Julie. And you know what? Now, even more than ever, because the world is moving at such a fast pace. And if you pay attention to any, of those thought leaders on the technology, I mean, the world is moving fast and things are changing fast. And it is a struggle for somebody who doesn't have experience with technology to almost get any job. I mean, it is everywhere. And it's not that they can't learn, but that's a real barrier that has to be considered and looked at. Like there are, certain things that some people just can't do. Even if they had a college degree 30 years ago, okay, like, and they will tell you, my brain works, but like, who's going to hire me to run a house or raise the kids? Like, I've done that. I just didn't get a paycheck for it per se. And so it's very challenging for anyone who has been out of the workforce. And look at now, look at Zoom. So much of these court proceedings now are on Zoom. There are many clients who just can't figure that out. And that's just because they never really had to. They're older. I mean, and that's just the facts. They haven't stayed up and haven't had to deal with it. So that is another, barrier that really does come into play when we look at their employability and what they can do.
Another factor, parenting responsibilities and contributions during marriage. This is actually a topic that we touched on last week on the show under child custody. So how does that work out? Why is this important?
This is really important, and I can give so many examples, but a really good example is your children between forever, but before they drive, and if they have a lot of activities, like there's a lot of logistics, there's a lot of care. And sometimes maybe go to a school, there isn't a bus. And if there's not, the other parent, say you're divorcing and he travels for work, so he's not even there during the week, like it's not manageable for you to do both because of the needs of the children, that there is not another parent to help share that with you. Or with a special needs child, like they have a lot of appointments, or a child who has, a lot of medical issues and the transportation and the appointments. There's just a lot that truly you can't get anybody else to do. And that takes that time from you. So many times, the age of the children, their needs, and then who can help you with that, that's a big deal. So it's an absolute factor that we look at with alimony, and the courts are going to consider that.
And if you could find someone to pay for it, someone you would have to pay to do it, then you have to pay for it.
Indeed. And so then how do we reconcile that? And if they're better off with the parent rather than a paid person, then that's really who they should be with. And many of the courts feel that way because, we look at what's in their best interest. So again, for those who have been listening throughout on a weekly basis, I'm always tying one thing into another. And it's like, gosh, they're not all in a silo. It all comes together, which is really why you need somebody who can see the big picture and say, well, alimony in and of itself, if a person's not really doing a detailed analysis, they may be like, oh, this doesn't apply. It's like, but there's so many things, and we got to really look at every one of these factors in the life. How do I make this case for this person? Or, and as I've said this before, because of course we represent women only. And if she has exposure for alimony, I'm like, well, how do we defeat these so that you don't have to pay?
By the way,
I know you're laughing, but I'm very straightforward. I may not be consistent in my beliefs, but I am, because I am for women.
Yes, I am laughing. If you want to catch up on any of those episodes, you can go to womenwinningdivorce.com. So what about the lifestyle during the marriage? How much of a part does this play in how much the person can get for alimony?
It absolutely plays a part, meaning, annual vacations. If as a family, you guys have always taken vacations and those are part of the history of the marriage, that's relative. It's not like, oh, now that you're divorced, you don't ever get to take a vacation, and that money shouldn't be put into the equation. Now, when I say equation, so there is what's called the Financial Affidavit. All of our clients are, hear about it ad nauseum. We work with them. We work very diligently. It's basically a budget. It can be very overwhelming. It's like, 10 pages, and we are breaking down what it costs for you to live. And that is what is one of the most important pieces of evidence in the case, because that's how we determine what your need is. So on one of those lines is vacations. On one of those lines is pet care. And people are like, what? You're spending that much money on your pets? We've talked about kids, but they do. Gosh, once you got them. And then some people, have animals that have all kind of needs, and we're not going to just euthanize them. I mean, which is what probably somebody would say, but it goes on there, line item, and there's many things, with many women, it's your personal care and, getting your hair done, and no man wants to know how much that costs, but it costs, but you like it, when you got the nice blonde hair or no roots and gray. I mean, come on. Like what? Now all of a sudden we're going to go and not get her hair done or get her nails done? And now she's falling on the floor laughing. But Julie, it's true.
I'm laughing because it is true. It really is. But you know what? This is something I'm sure. Again, I'm not the only one who didn't think about this. The Financial Affidavit, it really covers everything.
It does. And many women, it can be intimidating because they're like, I don't know what the mortgage is, the electricity, whatever. It's like, well, we're going to help you with that. And you got to get the bank statements, and you go through and let's figure it out. And, we do more than one financial affidavit, because where you're living right now, as we're starting this divorce, you may or may not live there afterwards. It may be a huge house that is going to cost so much, it doesn't make financial sense to stay there. Or you may not want to, or you do. So we got to look at that. So there's a lot of things that go into the analysis. And some people are like, food, meals out, meals in, I don't know. It's like, well, go through the ATM. And sometimes women are like, oh my gosh, like I had no idea I was spending this much. So it's a good exercise, and it helps you see where the money's going, because you know what? You really need to pay attention as this finishes, because you're going to have a set number coming in, and you're going to need to know that, what is it covering, and how does that look, and what in this, because certainly last week we talked about child support. There's a whole section for what you spend on your child. Guess what? That gets removed for determination of alimony. And that seems crazy, but.
Okay, so there's a lot there. There's really a lot there. I mean, there's things that we need to talk about even more in the next segment of the show. This is Women Winning Divorce with Heather Quick, owner and attorney for Florida Women's Law Group. Heather, one of the things we're going to kind of double back before we get to the different types of alimony here in the state of Florida. But what does the length of the marriage have to do with alimony?
The length of the marriage really has to do, it's been defined in the law. And I'll just give you that to start. Okay, so the law has defined, okay, this is a short-term marriage. That means 7 years or less. So they're just defining it. Here's a short-term marriage. Now they're saying a middle-term marriage is 7 to 17 years. And then they say long-term marriage is over 17 years. Now, the reason they define this is because then they're saying, hey, a short-term marriage, we're going to really much presume that there's not going to be permanent alimony. Now, always exceptions in the law. Same with a middle term. We're going to presume that it's not going to exist this permanent alimony on that length of marriage. And then with a long-term marriage, we are going to presume that, yes, permanent alimony would apply. And that's just a basis, a guideline for the analysis, because then it goes on to many of the factors, some of which we've talked about, but at least it helps people understand, because generally speaking, when someone comes to the office, none of the length of the marriage is then this means this. It's not okay, short-term marriage, you go into this type of alimony. It's not like that. It's a full analysis where we incorporate everything. And it may be something where our analysis is, all right, based on what I'm hearing, what I understand of the case, like before we've gotten into all the financials, it sounds like alimony will be an issue. And then what we then determine in giving advice, and what we're going to say, hey, these are what we think realistically we can achieve for you, is going to be that what's the amount of alimony and for how long. So that's the second analysis.
Okay. So you mentioned some of these terms just now. So let's go ahead and talk about the types of alimony. In Florida, there are 5 types of alimony. Tell me this, first of all, is this different for every state?
Yes, some states do not have permanent alimony, and that one I know for sure, because that one is such a, hot topic all the time. But yes, there are, it, like we've discussed, that it is dependent on the state, the various types of alimony. And so that there may be similarities, but ours are specifically defined as these types.
Okay, so let's break down the 5 types of alimony. First of all, temporary alimony. It sounds self-explanatory, but tell me about it.
Well, it is, but that means that's during the proceedings, during the divorce. Okay, so hey, we filed for divorce. Especially if somebody moves out. Okay, well, you need to continue supporting your wife as we are going through the divorce. So that may be through consent, or we go and get a court order and say, hey, he, moved his direct deposit salary from the joint account to his own account and is not paying the bills, and she needs support, and this is what we need to do. And that's helpful because sometimes the cases go on for a year or two. And so it becomes important to have a temporary order on support.
Okay. So, if this is during the divorce proceedings, it seems like this should be like an emergency type situation. Okay, I need to go before the judge right now and we need to talk about this because if he's moved his direct deposit, then I don't have no money.
Yes, but it is not an emergency. The courts do not look at financial issues as an emergency. They are more, no, I know it's crazy, but it's true. Now, it doesn't mean we can't, I mean, there's so much going on with the court system. It's hard to get a hearing in a short amount of time. And as you can imagine, if the husband has done this, they're not in a hurry to get in front of a judge. So, they're scheduling issues with their attorney and the judge. But many times, you can get there, but it's difficult. And that is something that we all talk to our clients about. Like, if you're concerned about this, that's why I don't go tell them you're coming to see an attorney. Don't tip them off, because financially that's going to hurt you more. And doing our very best, you got to expect we're not going to get in front of the court within the first 60 days of filing. So unless there's a true emergency that one of the judges at one point wrote an order, blood on the pavement kind of thing. So, which is kind of graphic, but that's what they consider an emergency, not finances. So therefore, their strategy from the very, very beginning so that, our clients don't suffer as much, and don't have to deal with a lot of these issues. We try to help them anticipate things that will happen.
Okay. Is one way of anticipating this is you need to sock some money away?
Yes, that is a very, very good idea.
Yeah, gotcha. Bridge the Gap Alimony. What exactly is that?
So that was created based on exactly what it says. And this is a very common type of alimony. Bridge the gap from being married to being single. Like, there's going to be a period of time, and the max is usually about 2 years. So it's a very defined amount. This you might see in a shorter term marriage that, like, and you can also have a couple different types of alimony, ordered in a divorce, but because they define them by certain things like the length of time or the reason for it. So bridge the gap is basically exactly, hey, bridging the gap from married to single. You're going to need time to get back on your feet and, get readjusted. Maybe, if there are kids, those could be some issues. So that's typically what that is addressing.
Okay. And okay, does it say, well, you have to use the money to do this during this time?
Not for bridge the gap. That's for rehabilitative alimony.
So what is the money used for? I mean, just anything that you need, basically.
Yeah, I mean, generally we have made the case that that's going to help with housing. Maybe you need time to find a job or you want to get a different job. So, that's going to give you more money, but maybe you need some training. You need to update, like we were talking about earlier, technology. Like, you're like, hey, I'm skilled to do this work, but they're going to have to train me and I'm not going to make as much money or I've got to renew maybe some kind of certification. Could be a lot of things, but also it's just going to take me time to get up to speed. So I need a year or two where you're helping support me till I can figure out, what I'm going to do.
Okay. You know what? It sounds like with this one, the spouse, the husband will say, "Oh, I won." I mean, are they happy with that as long as, they don't choose the longer term one?
Yeah. I mean, I've never heard anybody say, yeah, I'm happy about that kind of alimony.
Okay. Got it. I'm just thinking, just telling you my thoughts.
It's the right way to look at it. I like the way you think.
Because seriously, if you look at it, we're talking about the 5 different types of alimony, and that's a specific period of time. It's not permanent. It's not going to kill you. So I don't, it just seems like you can think about it in a more positive way?
Yes, and it's definitely a shorter period of time.
Right.
And that's, has value, of course. Knowing this is when it's going to end. A lot of times it's not modifiable, meaning you can't go change it. So that's, a value as well.
Okay, that's interesting. All righty. So let's talk about the next one, rehabilitative alimony. What is that? What does that mean?
That is the best example is, you got married and you didn't finish your education, or you don't have one, or you have a degree in history and you're like, I don't even know what I'm going to do with that. So, you're looking at it, and this is, and not all women, all individuals are like want to go do something different. And that depends on the age and circumstances, but it's like, you know what? They say, hey, I really wanted to get a degree in, I'll just say nursing, or I want to teach, but I'm going to need a certificate. But you have to have a detailed plan. That's what the law requires. So we would say these are all the classes that you're going to take, and it's going to take exactly 3 years for you to finish and have a degree in nursing. And then, you're going to make a nice living, and this plan, this alimony does allow for that. So you may not be able to work. You might need this amount of money to go to school and to support you, but it does have a defined amount of time as well, because you have to have a plan like, hey, I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to get this degree. I'm going to go become a dental hygienist. There's all these jobs out there. Like, I will then, just need to do this for 2 years. So there's many, if you think of all the different careers, and that it helps with these to specifically have a career that it kind of points right to a job, like a registered nurse, a dental hygienist, not like, communications. I mean, Julie, like, I don't think it's that easy to get a radio job on where you are, like, you could do the plan for that. However, or I want to be a newscaster on TV, not as defined as a plan. I would say, well, let's come up with something a little more solid that has a clear path to employability.
Okay, now here's my question. Do you help them develop that plan?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we talk about it. I've had clients go to nursing, go to nutrition, with the idea, this is exactly what I want to do and how I wanted to do it. And I always wanted to do this. I just never finished, whatever. Yes, we absolutely talk to them. Maybe they want to go to cosmetology school. They want to be a yoga instructor. And I love yoga, but that's not really, that doesn't pay a whole lot. So I would say, well, let's talk about something else. Let's like really look at what will what does those jobs look like? Like, take this opportunity. It really is reinvent yourself. Go for, what did you not do? And those are the kind of conversations we do have with the women who like are in that exact position, who are like, yeah, I want to go do this. I want to become an esthetician. So many different things that really, it's like, okay, that makes sense. There are jobs out there for that. This would be the length of time. We would, that would be the evidence we would have going to court saying that's the type of alimony we would have, rehabilitative.
Heather, you are a career coach, a therapist, a life coach. You're an attorney, obviously, but I'm just naming the extra stuff. You know what I mean? You and your team, you really have to have on all these different hats in order to help your client, because this is about starting another life.
It really is. And it is about their future, which is the way, we look at this divorce. It's a relationship with their office, because we just want you to be successful. We want you to use this as hard that it can be, to use it as an opportunity to start over if you want, or just to really recognize your full potential.
You're listening to Women Winning Divorce with Heather Quick, owner and attorney for Florida Women's Law Group. Heather, let's pick up where we left off. We have two more types of alimony in the state of Florida that we need to talk about. The first one, durational alimony. All right, what does that mean?
So that is, the premise of that is where, it's not really meeting the standard for permanent alimony, but it's necessitated because of the economics, and it should be for a set period of time. There are some rules on it. It can't, so if you're married for 15 years or 12 or 15, let's say 15 years, durational alimony cannot be longer than the length of the marriage. That is in the statute. And basically, so you can't name it durational and then have it last longer. It's got to be, if it's listed as that, you would usually see that, let's say in a 13-year marriage, it's probably going to be about half. That's where you would start off just thinking, okay, what would that realistically, when you're looking at time? Durational, because we've already gone through the analysis. Okay, there is alimony, and now we're on that second part. Well, how long? Okay, so durational is probably going to be more appropriate. We don't have any rehab plan. We need it longer than bridge the gap. So now let's look at durational, and we're going to argue for that as a period of time.
Okay. So, and I believe you just said this, but I want to make sure. Is this the most common?
I would say this is very common, absolutely, because it's, and it may be, not always, but you could be married longer than 17 years, but permanent alimony just really is probably not the most appropriate. And I'll give you the example I usually give people is, maybe they're married 20 years, but they got married at 19 or 20. So they're still very young. You're in your 40s and educated. And I was like, it doesn't mean, maybe we don't use that as a negotiator, but for the reality, I don't think that is a likely award for you. I think more likely would be a durational alimony award. So so that could be 20 years, but it can't be longer than that if that's how long you've been married. But that would more likely than not be the most appropriate. So that's kind of what we were talking about, Julie, where, okay, you're saying permanent alimony, and us saying, okay, let's be realistic, just in our attorney-client discussions, that this is what I see fitting your situation, doesn't mean we're not asking for all of them and putting forth a case on all, but it's helpful, I think, for the clients to hear from their attorney. This is where I would say it would end up if we were in front of a judge ordering it. And I think that helps clients when we come time to mediate and make decisions. If I say, it's a long shot on the permanent, and I don't really think it's your strongest case. So if we're, negotiating, durational makes the most sense for you.
Okay, random thought. Has someone ever been eligible for alimony and then they said, nope, I don't want it? He can have everything that he has. I am not interested.
Yeah, then they come to us a year later and they're like, I was a fool. I was like, yeah, you were. Yeah, you were, girl. You didn't stand up for yourself. Yes, we certainly have. And sometimes they change their tune. And the key is, for me, like we talked about earlier, you need to know what you're entitled to. You are an adult and you make a decision. Our job, unless it's really bad, and then we say we can't sign off on that because I don't think you truly appreciate it, whatever. That doesn't happen that often, especially when I write them a letter and say, you're doing this against our advice and we very much disagree. You need to sign this and acknowledge we've told you this is really a bad idea. Then they kind of second guess that, like, oh, okay, maybe not. I think there is a thought And I'm certain many women have done that. And you know what? Said, you know what? It was worth it. I had to be free. And you know, hey, that's what I'm saying. Just understanding what that's the most important, because we are adults, and I do respect somebody's decision. You just need to understand. And that I've told you 3 years from now, you may second guess it, but as long as you recognize that and you're fine with that. But so certainly, yes, that happens.
Can someone go with a settlement, like this is it, this is the final dollar amount, as opposed to alimony?
Yes. Well, what we call that, it's not really a different type of alimony. It's called lump sum. But basically lump sum is your payout of durational. And that's only, we might write it a certain way in an agreement, but if you're wanting to receive that from a court, that's what it means. So in saying, instead of you paying me for 2 years, well, let's say 2,000 a month, just give me 50 grand and we'll walk away. So that would be an example of that. So absolutely. And of course, in negotiations, there's lots of possibilities. I don't think I did the math on that correctly, but you're looking at me like, Heather, was that 50 grand, 2,000? And I was like, no, it wasn't.
But you know what? I like your math better, so don't worry about it. So.
I'm sure she'd be like, yeah, I'd rather have that. You'd be like, well, you're crazy. Yeah. So anyway, but you understand what I mean.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay. So many other questions. Let's talk about permanent alimony. What is that?
Permanent alimony is an award of alimony until one of you dies or you remarry. So if you remarry, then you do not continue to get permanent alimony, because permanent alimony is meant to financially meet your needs based on, such a long marriage, and, you relied upon that.
Okay. What if the person dies and, okay, I'm obviously not going to be getting this money. Do I get his insurance policy?
So that needs to be negotiated. That is not a definite. We do request life insurance to secure permanent alimony. And there's a different law on that. Like, it's not really required, because they're like, he's dead. What right does he have? What obligation does he have to support you if he's dead? So, but if life insurance is available, then we do work hard to make that happen, so that you're not, left with nothing if he passes away, because that could be devastating. So, but if the husband is not insurable or it's cost prohibitive, then, that's just the reality of it. So it's not there, there are a lot of risks. There's downsides to permanent alimony for sure. That being one of them, if they're not insurable, and, it's looking at, well, is there another way to achieve that? You really are financially tied to this person forever. You can't get remarried again and still receive the alimony. There's also laws about cohabitation. So, and that used to, that's how women would get around it for a long time and still receive the alimony. But I think it serves its purpose in the law. And, in a lot of cases, it is absolutely appropriate. And it, it's whether or not the other side likes it or not, it's absolutely appropriate.
Okay, I have a thought. This may sound bad, but what if the wife knows something about the husband and she says, he is not going to live that much longer. I need a payout now as opposed to the permanent. Seems like that's something they should disclose to you ahead of time, because it seems like something.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Or frankly, Julie, like, that they're like in love with somebody else and they can't wait to get married. It's like, do not spend all this money and attorney's fees on us trying to get you an award of permanent alimony if those are your intentions, which I have no judgment on. I just don't want to get you something that's basically has no value. Let's work towards what benefits you more. So absolutely, yeah, it's more worthwhile to, tell your attorney, absolutely. Something like that, because we are working on a strategy and we're trying to achieve certain goals. You need to understand, hey, if you do this with this person, that's going to remove your alimony. And so therefore, maybe tell your attorney that before we spend all this time to get it.
And you know what? I was thinking about that. Help them understand that your conversation with them, this is a safe place. So please disclose.
Exactly. Because I am not here to judge, to tell you not to do it. Now, I will if you come to me, a year after we went to trial and got you permanent alimony to say, I'm in love, I got to get married. I'm like, oh. And I have had that conversation. I'm like, really? Can't you just get some more money out of them for a couple more years? And that's not very nice because they want to move on with their life. And that's great. So, but yes, it's like, let's have a conversation so we're on the same page, that what we're achieving is really what you want and fits with your view of your future.
Permanent alimony. Usually, this is, as you mentioned, having to do, one, with the length of the marriage, mostly a long-term marriage, and also whether or not the woman can return to the workforce or go into the workforce at all.
And even so, we talked about that. You can still get permanent alimony and work.
Ooh.
It's just you're not, able to make one. Maybe you work part-time. Maybe you're just not going to make enough to meet all of your needs financially.
Okay, that's interesting, because I was thinking, okay, once you get a job, that's it.
No. It may lessen your need, and that may be a reason to go back later for the husband to reduce it. But no, it may be like there's still a gap in what you make and what they make in your needs. So you may have a gap financially if your husband doesn't have the ability to pay because, it's the same, it doesn't qualify. But if he makes more than you do. So permanent alimony, like I know in that earlier example, I was saying like $5,000 a month. I mean, it could be $1,000 a month, but that $1,000 a month really fills in that gap that you need. Now, more likely it's going to be more because you need more money than, you're not having a job and having that small of a gap. But it can be. It's not like, hey, it's this, floor amount. Like, unless it's this, don't do it. I mean, no, that's not true at all.
And what if the wife has special needs medical care, that type of thing?
Absolutely. And then, that can be a big issue, that they are unable to support themselves due to, a medical issue or something like that. That may be a reason that permanent alimony is ordered over a different kind of alimony.
And sounds like that could happen no matter the length of the marriage.
True. The length of the marriage then is a factor, but then there are these other factors that certainly could be argued.
All right, so we've talked about modifications and how difficult it is for this to happen. So can the permanent alimony be modified or even terminated? We talked about how it can be terminated as far as if she remarries, but any other circumstances?
Yeah, so what now that is in the law is if you have a supportive relationship, which essentially is a romantic relationship, but also financial, even though if you're not legally married. And those cases are very fact intensive, but can be proven, and you can terminate alimony if you can prove that exists. And again, you don't live together anymore, especially if you guys are in different states. It's a little bit more difficult, but if you're doing that and you start to see a stranger poking around, he's probably hired a PI to try to prove that. So, I definitely, ask my clients to pay attention. And the modification can be if maybe their income goes down, and due to retirement often, and that happens a lot, where you're going to see that modification filed, when they're older.
Well, that makes sense. I understand that. Oh boy, so many other places I want to go, but we are out of time. Heather, anything else you'd like to add on this topic?
No, just that we just scratched the surface. It is alimony is a really great tool in the law, but there's so many ways it can go. So that's, where I always say as we close, talk to an attorney, call us, let us walk through it with you, because you don't know what you don't know.
Thank you for listening to Women Winning Divorce. We hope you found information to help you navigate your divorce. If you like our show, please take the time to subscribe and provide a 5-star review. If you need more information, please visit our website at womenwinningdivorce.com, where you will find previous episodes and other helpful content. Join us next week as we continue our journey of women winning divorce.